Hi, I'm Christina, CEO of Fictionary, and today I'm covering what is a story element. Simply put, a story element is a mandatory portion of a story. You can think of the story elements as the building blocks you'll use to ensure your novel is strong. They are tools to help you design and evaluate your story. Every scene in a novel is made up of story elements, and Fictionary groups the 38 story elements into structure, character, plot, and setting. Why do elements of a story matter? A great story is made up of a collection of great scenes structured in a compelling order. Fictionary shows you how to use the 38 story elements to create remarkable scenes, link them together, and finish a novel your readers will love. Characters, plot, and settings are essential components of a story. So when to edit with the story elements? A story edit can only be performed once a draft manuscript is written. The story must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I know that sounds obvious, but if the whole structure isn't there, the manuscript is not a draft yet. Along with the beginning, the middle, and the end, the story must also include the inciting incident, plot point 1, the middle, plot point 2, and the climax. All the connecting scenes must also be written. So let's review the story arc. There must be an inciting incident, which is whatever happens to shift the protagonist from their ordinary life. Plot point 1 is where the protagonist can't turn back from this new challenge, whatever it is in the story. The middle is where they start to muck things up. They get proactive instead of reactive, and they're going to move forward towards plot point 2, which is their lowest point in the story. Then on to the climax, which is the scene with the most tension and where the reader learns if the protagonist wins or loses when it comes to achieving their story goal. The resolution follows the climax. Once the draft is written, only then can a story edit be performed using the 38 Fictionary story elements. Elements all work together, and it includes looking at the overall structure, each scene, and back to the overall structure. So how to check if the story arc is consistent? The story arc is one way to evaluate the structure of a story. You must draw it to see if it's working for you. The character story elements. Evaluate and revise your story against the character story elements, and you'll create captivating characters. You'll start by looking at who is in a scene. This is critical for having control over your story. For every character, ask if the character is needed in the scene. Do they serve a purpose? If not, it might be time to cut them. Yes, harsh, but sometimes necessary. Once you know who is in the scene, look to see if the point of view character is the right one. This means asking who will be impacted most by the scene. If it's not the point of view character, it might be time to choose a different one. If a character doesn't want something badly, then what are they doing in the story? And why are they the point of view character for the scene? And even if they do want something, is it related to the story? If not, it's the wrong thing to want. What happens if the character doesn't get what they want? Are there consequences? If not, again, it's the wrong thing to want. Read the scene and ask, how does the scene impact the point of view character and the protagonist if they're not already the point of view character? If the character's emotional state doesn't change from the beginning of the scene to the end, the character will seem flat, and hence the scene is boring. List what the point of view character knows. Then remember to check they can only take action on events they know about. And finally, are the characters in motion? Characters who don't move are dull. Let's take a look at the plot elements. Naming a scene is one of my favorite elements. It gives you an after-draft outline to help you revise your story. It also means the scene has focus. The purpose of the scene is why the scene is in the story. Varying the scene opening and closing types ensures you keep the story from being repetitive. If a reader is not anchored in point of view, location, and time, they will get confused and may stop reading. Entry and exit hooks grab the reader and keep them engaged in the story. Either tension or conflict must be in every scene. Without one or the other, the story drags. Revelation, backstory, and flashbacks contain what the reader needs to know and nothing more. The scene middle is the turning point of the scene, and the climax is the most exciting part of the scene. Keeping track of the flow of action and sequel scenes helps you control pacing. When the reader knows something the protagonist doesn't, you've automatically added suspense. The setting elements are often under or overutilized. But first, it's important that we are working from the same definitions of what a setting in a story is. Location, and yes, you guessed it, is where the scene takes place. Don't let this be chosen automatically. Strategically choose the location for the maximum tension. Date and time are when the scene happens. Objects are things in the scene. The senses help the reader experience the scene through the character. This is how you control connecting readers to characters. When you review the emotional impact of the location, ask if you chose a different place, would there be more tension? If the answer is yes, choose a new location. Keeping track of changes in location, also called location split, within a scene means if a scene gets too long, then a location change is a good place to break the scene into two scenes. Weather is not just about having weather, it's about using weather to increase tension or conflict. So choose weather wisely. So let's talk about the story elements and creativity. Story elements don't limit your creativity, they ignite it. The elements force you to evaluate your story in a structured manner. And by evaluating your story, you'll come up with new ideas to make your story better. The story elements focus you on what to consider and where to make creative changes. So the top 5 mistakes story editors make. 1, being subjective instead of objective. 2, not being comprehensive. 3, being vague instead of specific. 4, favoring big picture editing over details or vice versa. And 5, too much copy editing. So how do you get better at structural editing? As an editor or a self-editor, it's important to avoid the top 5 mistakes. An exceptional editor is objective. Have you ever had a client who said, I don't like your advice, you're just one person with an opinion? This means the writer thought the edit was subjective instead of objective. To be an exceptional editor, you need to know how to give objective advice that motivates the writer instead of sending them into a world of despair and making them think they can't write. Personal biases must be removed from the editor's work. Some editors focus on characters, some on plot, some on setting, and horrors on copy editing instead of story editing. So number 2, an exceptional editor is comprehensive. There are 38 fictionary story elements. An editor must evaluate the story against these elements if they want to be comprehensive, and I mean all of the elements. Number 3, an exceptional editor is specific. Advice that is specific and actionable gives the writer a way to improve. Vague advice is not helpful. The advice I really don't care for is make your protagonist likable. What does that mean? As a writer, what am I supposed to do with that vague recommendation? Number 4, an exceptional editor gives big pictured advice and detailed advice. This means you'll give advice about the overall structure, meaning the story arc, word count per scene, etc., right down to the scene level. An exceptional story editor does minimal copy editing. If you'd like to learn more about why it's important not to copy edit while story editing, our course, An Insider's Guide to Story Editing, has a section on what copy editing is, along with examples for real edits, on what is too much copy editing, what is good copy editing, and when to copy edit. Check down below for a link to our course so you can sign up if you like. And just for watching this video, I'm going to give you a huge discount. You can have the Insider's View course by using the coupon code Insider's View. You'll get the course for $39 instead of $99. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.